Hi, and welcome to Best in Tesla. As you might know, I have a book out right now. I've been writing about the Elon Musk mission, how to make the future awesome, together with author Randy Kirk. And there was also contributions from John Gibbs, aka Dr. Know-It-All, and Brian Wang from The Next Big Future. But we sat down, all four of us, to discuss Elon's mission and all his company, and the discussion quickly became very interesting, so you don't want to miss this one. So let's check it all out and let's dive right in. Well, we have this amazing book released today, apparently. And called the Elon Musk Mission, how to make the future awesome. As Elon has said many times before, the future should be exciting, and I think his companies is doing exactly that. So I would really like to dive into, what do you think is the most exciting thing about Elon's companies when we look into the future? What are you most excited about that is coming along? Should we start with you, Randy? You are the big author of this book.
The big author. Well, that's one way to look at it, I suppose. So it's so hard to select among, all of the possibilities. I suppose that being an entrepreneur myself, my entire life, I'm always looking at the bright, shiny object. So the newest bright, shiny object is Optimus, and Optimus potentially, I guess, there's almost no way to look at Optimus as other than the largest potential TAM, out there. The total addressable market for a robot even in my little factory. I had a factory with 100 employees. I probably could have eliminated about 30 of them with Optimus as he is right now. Is it a he? As the Optimus robot is right now. I mean, I had employees who did nothing but put push caps on bottles. And not the screw caps, but the little push on, like a bicycle style water bottle. That's what we manufactured. Mm. And that's all the employees did all day long, was take this cap and put it on the top of it. I'm pretty darn sure Optimus could do that job right now. But I had some automation people come in. I had actually redesigned the whole setup because it has a little tether on it. I should have had a bottle in my hand here, but had a little tether and then the cap. You've all had squeeze bottles probably in your life. And I had redesigned it so that if the tether was lined up with the top of the bottle, you could just push the whole thing down with one motion. So then I brought in the automation people. This is about 30 years ago. And the automation people said, yeah, we think we can make a machine to do that. It'll cost you $100,000. I said, great. And I said, and what if it doesn't work? They said, well, we're not going to guarantee it'll work. I'm like,
what?
That story is designed to say that's the difference between existing automation and what Optimus will be about. Because Optimus will always work. It's just a matter of which day. It might take him 3 days to learn it, or 5, or however that might be. But it's not a case of will he be able to do it. It's a case of what kind of training will it take to get him there. So as an old factory guy, I would say Optimus is at the top of my list. What about you, John?
Oh, goodness. Wow, there's so much. I think everybody who knows me probably knows that full self-driving is my thing. I'm super excited about Optimus, but part of that is because it is effectively full self-driving on steroids, right? So we're looking at the better that full self-driving gets, the better that Optimus will be able to get. And I've started to actually consider the fact that the better Optimus gets, the better full self-driving is going to get. I think it's actually a virtuous circle where each one of them can learn things. And as they learn things, they can actually feed it back to the other one. So I'm really excited about that. I was actually just saying, I was talking with Tesla Fix. I was doing an interview before I did this one. And I was talking about how my jaw hit the floor when Optimus walked out by itself, like at AI Day, because I happened to be there, which was lovely. But I walked out on it walked out on the floor, waved to everybody, and then it, went back away. And everyone was like, "Oh, that's really, really just, yeah, it did this." But everyone said, "Oh, that's disappointing. It doesn't do what Boston Dynamics robots do. It can't do backflips and things like that." And I said, "Yeah, but the hard part in my mind that Tesla had to overcome was building that thing right there." I was like, they have the brains, they have the incredible automation to be able to build 100,000 of these things if they want to, right, per year easily. That they could build, well, over time, not year one, but over time they could build a lot of these things because they have that capacity. So the hard part was, can they build a robot that works? And as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, wow, okay, this is going to be a big future we're going for here. So that's what I got excited about.
Yeah, I didn't expect them to have a robot that could do that, because I was like you, I'm mostly excited about the brain part of it, and hopefully they can show us some cool stuff there. But that they had a robot walking on stage without any help, that was pretty amazing.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. So how about Brian?
The most exciting thing for me is well, all of the other things are exciting and part of a larger picture, and I see how that will all fit together. And actually, a follow up to what we're doing here, I have detailed out how I think that will all happen. But in terms of like the most interesting thing right now to me is the Starship Super Heavy SpaceX work there, and the other parts of that, which are the launch tower. So Mechazilla, which I view as like a 450-foot tall robot, because it doesn't have legs to move around, but it has arms that move up and down by 1 meter per second. And it's part of what Elon's first principles thinking is, that he'll go to, what do we have to do to achieve, a 10x, a 1000x, and they're not afraid to and this will reach some, crazy ambitious thing. It's like, if we do it, then this happens. So everyone knows that they've landed, over 100 times with the Falcon 9 onto the drone ships, right? People don't realize that the drone ship is not actually that much a bigger target than the chopstick arms on the Mechazilla launch tower. That because of the scale of the Starship Super Heavy is so much bigger, that those chopstick arms, when you take the view of it, is actually like 80% of the size of the drone ship. So they basically said, we've landed on the drone ship 100 times, we can land on chopstick arms. And the arms can move up and down a little bit, so that as it's coming in, we need to adjust slightly. They can move 1 meter per second to adjust the contact point, right? And the reason that that thing is so powerful, along with the Starship, one, the full usability of Starship. Okay, well, both halves, we've been landing 80% of what we launched, because that's how much the engines are for the Falcon 9, and 90% of the Falcon Heavy. They can say, okay, we can land both parts, 100% readability of the Starship Super Heavy, but because they're landing on the Mechazilla, instead of landing out on a drone ship taking 21 days, that's the fastest they've turned around a booster. They can then turn it around in an hour potentially. And definitely a day becomes very doable, because it's right where it needs to be. It's on the launch tower. I don't have to move this 200-ton or 2,000 tons loaded with fuel objects around. I can just have it ready to go. So it becomes like the airport runways, where we're launching planes, every few minutes, right? So by having that a level of usability is where we're getting to basically the science fiction type worlds, where rockets are very common, moving cargo, and then launching all the satellites of Starlink, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, becomes trivial. And that gets to and then that goes on to, the next piece, which is the direct communications that they're going to do with T-Mobile from orbit down to Earth, where all of our, regular cell phones, not a special satellite phone, a regular cell phone, can then text and voice everywhere. So air cargo by rocket, an hour anywhere or less. And I can go into much more detail around on those things, but those are how our day-to-day lives could be like, I could have breakfast in Tokyo, lunch in Paris, go over to, someplace else, in the world, New York, something like that, like all in one day. So that kind of like our world changes completely is something that's powerfully exciting.
We did that LA to Singapore flight, which at the time was the longest flight in the world, something like 18 hours or something like that.
Mhm.
I'm all in for that rocket to take me from here to Singapore in 45 minutes.
That would be nice. Yeah, we went to South Korea from Atlanta, and that was about 15 and a half hours. So yeah, when you get on those long haul flights, you're like, geez. Brian, I will add one other thing. I think people often think that whole Mechazilla thing is impossible, like you said, but in one way, it's actually easier for the super heavy booster. And that's because when the Falcon booster lands on the drone ship, the lowest they can throttle that single engine is still more than the weight of the vehicle. So they have to do kind of a suicide slam where they basically have to come in and hit it. They can't hover. Whereas the Starship will actually be able to throttle down enough that it could hover for a while. So it could actually sit there on the launch pad and kind of adjust itself into position before it gets caught. So that makes it, I mean, it really is going to be science fiction to watch that happen. I really can't wait for the first time we get to see that.
Yeah, that's just gonna blow people's mind.
Right.
And they're gonna come in with a little grab a rocket.
Pincher
like-
thingies.
Yeah.
Because there was some
Crazy.
guy on Twitter that also do videos where he had kind of created this in simulation and showed it off, and people were like, what the hell, that's never gonna happen, when Elon posed the idea. And now we have the tower with the chopsticks arms and already lifting around and stacking the Starship on the Super Heavy.
Brian, I think you said, is it 1 meter per second that can travel vertically?
Yeah, I understand correctly. The arms can move up and down like a meter per second.
But you think about how big these things are. They're going to be moving pretty fast, considering there are these gigantic machines that are going to be lifted up at 1 meter per second. I mean, it really is. I think, Lars, I think you're exactly right. You see these CG renders and you're like, yeah, fine. That's not what it's like. No, that really is probably what it's going to look like. It's going to look just like that.
Yeah, because
and the other thing is they will mass produce them. Because
Right.
if I'm catching a super heavy booster once an hour, because they come back in like 10 minutes, pretty much one Mechazilla launch tower would be dedicated to a booster. And then could it be coming back all the time? Unless it's one that's going to be launching Starship after Starship, because you only need the upper stage to go anywhere in the world.
Right.
But then you could end up having hundreds of these, because they become the heart of every spaceport. So then they will mass produce these. So the combination of hundreds of spaceports, rockets going everywhere, cargo first, then people, and then you have Tesla bought things, it becomes like Star Wars universe. Droids everywhere, rocket spaceports.
Oh, gosh. I hope we treat the droids better than they do in Star Wars. They really don't treat them well.
Yeah.
We need to do a better job.
So one more question on the robots then. I have a question on the robots. Go around the panel. When do you think that they'll make the first run of robots? I think they'll make 1,000 or more in 2023 for the factories. I think they're really way further along on this than they're talking about. I think 1,000 or more 2023. What about you guys?
John,
I think they can definitely make 1,000 more. The production wouldn't be the issue. The cost to do it. The only reason they may not do it would be because it'd be somehow, if it was distracting to the smaller team, because their team is still building up and don't have that as many people. But having them go around and move some parts around in the factory, 1,000, because they have 15,000 people in the Shanghai factory or Shanghai facility, something in that range. So having 5,000 per shift, roughly per factory, 4 factories, it would make sense to get up to that, close to that number. Definitely a few hundred. You would want to at least test it out. It goes to the point about you were surprised that they were doing it. They tend not to just, unlike many companies, just design things on CAD and go iterate. They build it and then try and then also work on the manufacturability. So they would want to do a lot of tests that way. So But then arguing against that would be that they had far fewer Cybertrucks, but in terms of like prototypes. But then these are far cheaper. They're 30 times less mass than a Model Y. So building a lot would be, again, trivial for the manufacturing capabilities, and I think, as you say, has some benefits for the factory. So I say I would also bet on over 1,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take a stab. I think that they will have easily the capacity to build over 1,000 next year. But I think what Brian was saying is a reasonable argument. The thing is, they're probably going to want to build them in Fremont because that's the closest to their Palo Alto headquarters. Maybe they'll build them in Texas. I don't know. But if they do that, they just don't have room. Where are they gonna build an assembly line to make these things? So I think currently they're building them in their AI facilities like right now, but I mean, maybe they can come up with a prototype production line in those facilities there. I'm not exactly sure. If they have things like the actuators and stuff and the parts built someplace else, they can ship them in and put them together there. So, when you think about 1,000, what is that? Like a couple a day, basically, if you think about, right? So it is going to have to be it'll have to be an assembly line. It can't be done. So it just comes down to their facilities and whether they have the facilities to do it. Because I think you're right. I think seeing the difference between Bumble C and AI2, the one that looked more like a production version, it's a world of difference. And AI2 looked like, and again, that's the name that people have told me it's internally called, so that's why I'm calling it that. But anyway, that one, it looks like it could be manufactured. It could be mass produced. Like it wasn't that crazy, like little lights everywhere and like solder, like, it wasn't that crazy, like one-off sort of build. It looked like it could be built mass manufactured already. So clearly they're moving as quickly as they can to that. So if they don't get 1,000, maybe they'll get 500 next year. So it'll be a lot though. They'll be out in the factories doing things.
Yeah, and also think because if Elon is right and they can get it down to $20,000 to produce it, it's not going to be hugely expensive for Tesla. This is going to be pickpockets for Tesla to do so. And I think Brian is very right on. It's also going to be, do they have the people to teach the robots the stuff they need to be taught? Because I think they could easily make a lot of robots, and I think they want to do that. As you also mentioned, Brian, they want to put a robot in the real world and test it out. And the more robots they have, the faster they can learn, because they can just, do an over-the-air update, and the 500 robots suddenly knows 500 things all combined. So,
which also goes to, like, do they have a developer pilot program? You think that they would, where basically I make a robot, you as the university, you as the company get one of these early bots, and you help make the software so that we can get to a Tesla bot app store kind of thing. But then, so the early work where I'm in the partner program, the partner developer program, right? Then you get out of just Tesla in the factory to bring in the outside people relatively early. So that, how that comes out is potentially interesting.
Right. I've also, I can't take credit for this idea, but one of the things people ask about is, where is it going to collect data? But somebody suggested, was it Farzad? I don't remember. Anyway, suggested glasses that would have little cameras in them and some sort of thing that would then you would plug it in at night and it would upload the information to the Tesla mothership. And I was like, that would be clever, because I just spent $100 on burnt hair perfume, or my wife did officially. So, Elon could sell anything. If he can sell burnt hair perfume, he could easily sell for $500 a pair of glasses that effectively is teaching the robot what's going on in the world. Yeah, easy, no problem at all. So that's another thing, is that they could monetize ancillary things to the Optimus. They could say, these are Optimus glasses, and I don't know, make them look like cool 1980s, dark glasses, or I don't know. But I just think that they have these potentials because they have such a rabid fan base.
Yeah. And what about the brain of the robot? To add on this one, when do you think, like, a robot that is really useful, that can do a lot of stuff, when do you think a robot like that is going to be here?
Once again, I'm not sure that I see the limiting factor here. I owned a plastics manufacturing factory for 28 years, and we built stuff from the ground up. We were vertical like Elon. We did everything in the same facility. We started out as 100% virtual, and we went to 100% vertical because it was just so much more effective, like Elon has discovered. So I'm not sure that I'm understanding the limiting factors here. This idea of the glasses, I love it. It seems like the training process would not be that hard. It seems like if you've got the range of motion that they're talking about with the various parts, you have the graspability. We already know that it has the sensitivity to be able to not crush things. I mean, these things are already done, and there's tons. I saw stuff at a show that I went to. I don't know, with my kids when they were little, like 20 something years ago, where they were showing some of these prosthetic robotic hands that are incredibly clever. And that was a very long time ago. So I'm not sure that there's a limit. I'm really having a hard time seeing the limiting factor.
So I'm optimistic in that I would want to be one of the early Tesla bot developers, to do that work, and that if it's hardware ready, so they get to a refined version of what they showed, their own actuators like that, and they say, okay, we close the loop on the hardware. We could still, just like they have hardware 1, hardware 2, hardware 3, hardware 4 on the FSD, they could say, okay, we have hardware 1 for Tesla bot, and then it'll be semi-frozen, we'll be backward compatible. We decide it's something that we can carry forward with in our plans. We'll have a hardware 2, hardware 3, but we have a hardware 1. So if you get hardware 1, then you can work on the initial software, work on it. And then the other thing would be that if utility aspect of it is a walking 1,000 times more hardware than the smartphone, right? So it has the power, the 3.5 kilowatt hours, something like that, and so way more, 30 times, 100 times more than a smartphone. So more compute, and it has the sensors and vision stuff. So it's a compelling stack of software, hardware, and that you would get over the updates because they know they can do that. So then you'd be, in that early use. So the fact that you could, as a ultra expensive toy initially, where you have an Alexa-like talking system built into it, and then having access to Tesla's like the in-car kind of like screen experience and games and stuff like that. There's certain things you could do with it where you would have some utility, but as a expensive showpiece, luxury piece, there's some value there. But then the fact that you'd be early into development, that it would be to a business sale, that even if it's $100,000, $50,000, that I think there's a compelling case for that. And then okay, just like I pay for X thousand dollars for FSD first, and I know it's going to be developed. I kind of faith that this, if I have that, this is part of that journey, then being early has value because I could, create something that would be sold to anyone else who follows along. So being that early adopter, I think, has even more value than being an early adopter in FSD.
Yeah, that could also be kind of a way of doing it. And if they can produce a lot of these robots and they don't have the capacity of their employees to do it, people like you, Brian, and other developers that wants to create their own app for the robot to do stuff, they could sell these robots, because if they can get it down to 20,000, yes, it's an expensive toy, but there are many people buying more expensive stuff than 20 or 30,000 to develop stuff like this. So that could also potentially be, if they can produce 1,000 robots, but they don't have the capacity with their employees to develop them, they could get outside developers to help them.
Right.
Yeah.
Great idea. I
think about, well, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in the book, I make the comparison to that old Lucy show. I mean, pretty much everybody in the world has seen Lucy on the chocolate production line, right? And she's inspecting, and then she's sorting, right? So she's moving, and she only really has 2 jobs. She has to inspect, and then she has to sort and put things in boxes. I don't see why. I think, again, I just have this hard time understanding why the Optimus isn't ready to go to do Lucy's job, to be able to visualize, make sure that it's correct, make sure there's nothing wrong with the product rapidly, like that. Then pick it up based on the assortment that it's trying to create and be completely customizing every single box if they wanted it to. And then putting it in the box, being able to pick it up and just make that move. And then if necessary, you could have that same bot or a bot right next to it, closing the lid on the box, putting the box over into a master carton, taking the master carton, putting that onto a conveyor belt that takes it to the front of the building, or giving it to a bot that takes it to the. But I mean, I did this for, pretty much most of my career was manufacturing and warehousing, and I'm having a hard time. I mean, as a manufacturer, I would have wanted 30 of them already.
Yeah. And I mean, one thing that's interesting, and Tesla hasn't done it yet, although they've said they might do it, is the idea of the App Store, the Tesla FSD. Now, in a car, there's just lots and lots of potential problems. It's moving very rapidly. It's a potential death machine if it's not done right. A robot is a very different world. And I think Brian's absolutely right. The idea that you could, hell, just sell it to people. Again, forget about the glasses. There will be people who will pay $30 or $40 or $50,000 to get the newest thing. And you just basically say, look, it's a toy that you can have at home. Or if you're a developer, we'll have an app store with an API, and you can develop the kitchen Tesla bot app, which will let it do like stack the dishes, turn the dishwasher on, maybe wipe the countertop. You can sell little packages to people for a subscription for, $30 a month. Oh my gosh, I'd pay $30 a month to have this thing be able to clean up my kitchen for me every day. So to be able to have little things like that, little extra apps that Tesla might not have the time or interest in developing, you could have individual developers work on that. And that would be lovely to share the pie a little.
Yeah.
It'd make everybody happy.
Yeah. Do you want the new Wash My Car app?
Right. Oh man.
Right.
Yeah. My car is really dirty right now. I would totally take that right now.
We'll be putting all the car washes out of business with this.
Will there be those things at the side of the road instead of the women holding up the thing? It'll be a robot holding it up saying car wash.
Yeah. But John, you're very much into this whole full self-driving and artificial intelligence. So if you should come with a guess, how far in the future do we have a pretty useful robot?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me about full self-driving. Everybody lately has been asking me that, and I'm like, oh.
What's your definition?
Yeah, that's the problem. I was going to say, I think it
now.
already is useful, right? So, okay, let's say inside Tesla's factories, I think within 6 months, they already are doing it, but it's in a tethered kind of prototype thing. But I think in 6 months, they will actually have robots maybe doing not quite as efficient, but somebody actually had said, they were saying like, they've got those hexagons that they do everything in their little, can't remember what they call it, cells. There we go. Yeah, but anyway, you could literally have the robots working in one cell and the humans in the other doing the same job, and just keep working until the robots get better at it. So I think within 6 months, we could easily have something like that. And at first they probably won't be that great or that efficient. But the beautiful thing about robots is once you get one good, they're all good. Yeah. You don't have to retrain. There's none of that kind of stuff. No onboarding, no HR, no retraining, none of that stuff. They're good and they're ready to go.
And compared to full self-driving, I would also say that this could be a very strict environment. You just stand next to this car and put this wire in there every day and turn it on or whatever they do. That's it. It should be pretty easy.
That's the huge advantage that these robots have. They're much, much harder to control, which is the reason why I didn't think they were going to have a walking robot. But when they did, I was like, everything else is so much easier. They're not going 70 miles an hour, 125 kilometers an hour. They're not going at these crazy speeds, and they don't weigh multiple tons. So they're not by definition dangerous. And I've said, even if the robot is running and it gets to a place where it's a little bit like, oh, I don't know what to do next, it can stop. A car can't do that. You can't be driving 70 miles an hour down the freeway and have the car just go like, I need to think about this for a minute.
Although mine does from time to time.
Yeah, it does.
I hate to say it, but
Well, but I'm saying that's why full self-driving is actually harder
Yeah.
than what Optimus is trying to do. So I'm very optimistic about Optimus.
Yeah, and we don't, and with Optimus, you won't have somebody behind you honking.
Yeah, exactly. Right. We'll just put I have like a AI student driver in training on the back of my car. We'll just put that on the back of the Optimus and say worker in training,
Human in training.
human in training. There we go.
Yeah, so adding on what John was saying, that the Joe Justice talked about how they have the digital self-management at every workstation. So if they have a paint station, multiple paint stations, they have a scoring system on it, which is basically a loss function for training the AI. And then there's other simplified environments beyond the simple factory work, which is certain warehouse work. So currently the Amazon, which bought Kiva, has those pallet bots, these box-like rectangle bots that move shelves and pallets and move things around to be picked and placed. There are certain people jobs in there where like the robots are moving a bunch of pallets, and then they have to have a human go in there. They drop something fell out, it was shaking around, something fell out, a human to go get that. So in a Tesla bot could go into a slightly less safe situation to interact with other robots and that kind of thing. And then but the warehouse thing, they often sell like 100 or 1,000 pallet bots at a time for a massive factory where you must have this system. Once you get Tesla bot working to a certain basic threshold level in a warehouse, then a very small factory could do it. They wouldn't have to have a whole system of, I must change out my entire system of working my factory so I can do pallet bots, so I can do all that software and hardware and stuff like that. So the drop in replace thing of a humanoid form makes it easier for actually smaller companies, smaller businesses to automate at a certain level. Plus, the vision and walking around, that's all you need for a security guard type situation, right? Or any kind of like monitoring nanny thing you'd have to work out the safety aspects of it. But having it there, watching something, calling out when something happens is again a simple use case that could be easily incorporated with current capabilities.
So could we, like in 2029, if Elon is right, that is about the time we're going to send a Starship to Mars and stuff like that, could it be robots aboard that one and help getting their colony ready up there?
Yeah.
It's getting into what I want to be our next book, which is I think that they will want to have part of the gigafactories making gigafactories. So if you replace the vast majority of workers with Tesla bots or completely, and then he's working to incorporate the mining aspect of things, then if I end up mass producing 1,000 Starships, 100 tons each, and think 100,000 tons, my D-Day invasion of Mars, when I worked out the math of the math, that basically seems to me like 20 to 100 Starships could move an entire contents of a gigafactory, all of the industrial arm robots, all the other stuff, gigapresses. You have to break the gigapresses apart to get the overall math of it up there. But you can move an entire gigafactory, and then you'd have a gigafactory making a gigafactory on Mars, on the moon. And then if you do it in a year, in 10 doublings, you have 1,000, 20 doublings, you have 1,000,000. So that would be, if you don't limit, we can't do this or whatever, everything works together, then, it gets pretty crazy pretty fast.
And how many Starships does he want to produce?
He's talked about making 1,000 to the fleet to go to Mars, but I think actually if he takes over air cargo, and then there's 30,000 passenger airplanes, roughly 40,000. Of course, a Starship would be
more capacity
used more frequently than a regular plane. So once you get to that, it's mainly the safety. The cost-wise, I've worked that out. That cost-wise, it could be superior because you're amortizing over more flight per day, and you can fly more people inside one. but that, yeah, so you have, if you take up air cargo, passenger air, yeah, 10,000, 20,000 starships could be justified. But if you're doing a lot more stuff in space, you can have even more. So, I could see, well, if you call it a solar system, do definitely get millions, but just more locally taking over the industries, 10,000, 100,000 starships.
So as you visualize all these transportation services, I a couple of 3 years ago, I was the first time that he mentioned the city to city possibility all over the world. I was contemplating this. You call your robotaxi, and the robotaxi takes you to the port. But then you have to get into some kind of a boat or other transportation to get to the island or to the pod or whatever it is out there where you get on the ship. But now that the Cybertruck is going to be waterproof, maybe the taxi will take you right on the water straight out to the pod.
Oh, there's just a boring tunnel out there.
Just a boring
Yeah.
tunnel.
That would be good. I like the tunnel idea. That's really nice. Yeah, that'll be, wow. What a world. Yeah, you'd never have to have, I really like the idea of cargo transportation, because that removes, the biggest issue with air transportation is safety of humans, because you don't want to kill people. But if you have automated cargo machines that don't even have any humans on them, why would you need any? And then if it crashes or blows up or something, that sucks. And there's a lot of money because people have their packages on there, but not nearly the same kind of thing. So you could actually, work out the kinks doing that without any people on board before you.
And Brian, didn't you say in the book, I think you either you did the math or you had somebody.
Yeah, I did. No, I did the math. Yeah.
It'll be cheaper to send a package in an hour to Hong Kong that it will be to UPS something to New York from Los Angeles.
Right. Because the fuel actually works out roughly the same for the rocket versus the airplane, and then especially if he works on lowering the fuel costs by generating it. And he's talking about like generating it using solar power and production of that. But like skipping that for a few years, then you're using it 10, 20 times more because you're flying it once an hour instead of the 18-hour flight. And so it ends up costing less because of the efficiency of it. And it's a necessary step to the passenger planes, as John was talking about. That basically, if I'm doing hundreds of thousands of flights a year for air cargo, I can, when I get to no crashes, I would have proved to people, we can have people on board. You have people on board earlier because you're doing the orbital flights, just saying I'm safer than the space shuttle was by 10 times like that. But going, for mass moving millions of people, flying 100,000, 1 million times, and saying not just simulated, we have flown 1 million times and we have no crashes, right? Then people can get on board.
Yeah, another thing with the cargo thing, because I did a video like 2 years ago, so I can't remember the math exactly, but I compared it to a freight ship. What do you call them?
A cargo ship, container ship.
Yeah, exactly. But it takes so long from Los Angeles to Sydney, for example. So it was like, but the Starship can just continue flying back and forward. So it could actually almost keep up with the amount of cargo that a ship like that could do, because it can just keep going. Mm-hmm. Where it takes a week or something. I can't remember the numbers to get down to Sydney.
Well, and you have the loading and the unloading, which would be so much easier than it is off a port. Yeah. Interesting. So I'm curious to know. I have another question. I know it's your show, Lars, but
go ahead.
So I've been fascinated, and I've gotten I don't know how many emails in the last 2 days from Brian. I've been fascinated for months, as you guys know, about energy, and it was a big part of what I wrote about in the book is about this whole energy thing, because I think the street still doesn't get it. Some of the other YouTubers and you guys have talked about energy, but I don't think the street gets it. I think we're going to, Brian, I think you just sent an email yesterday. You think that Lathrop will be, it's Lathrop, right?
Lathrop, right?
Yeah. That'll be fully ramped next year. So we're looking at 40 gigawatts of power in containers next year compared to, what was it, 2 in the third total in the third quarter?
Yeah.
Right. Right. The rumor was, I think it was on Electric or one of the websites saying that they were producing 25 megapacks per day.
Now,
But the thing is, it was confusing whether it was capacity or not. If we would say, it seems incredible that they would have 25 per day already, but capacity so that they could get there makes more sense. So that would mean that maybe, 2 quarters, something like that, to actually ramp up to the capacity would make more sense. And that would make sense to go from 2 to 4. Because if you actually got to 25 per day, that would work out to about like 9 gigawatt hours per quarter, right? So it's a leap from 2 to 9, even as great as Tesla seems, it wouldn't work out. So if it was over 2 quarters, we actually start ramping up to that, they go 2, 3.5, 5, in gigawatt hours in a quarter. So 2, 3.5. Then you get from $1 and a bit billion of energy revenue for storage to quickly to about like $4 billion.
Quarter.
Once you're doing the Lathrop fully ramped, based on the pricing of the mega packs and the power walls, because there's a leak about how many power walls they're making, which I think was like 7,500 or no, 75,000. I can't get that number, 7,500, 7,000. It worked out to about most of the revenue I think currently was power walls of what they're doing with that $1 billion, and they're about $10,000 each, something like that. So so then it'd be like 1 gigawatt hour power walls, 8 gigawatt hours per, if you have like 10 gigawatt hours once you get fully ramped. And then, but I think they're also doing the other batteries. I think Lathrop will be getting CATL LFP batteries in, and then also producing the nickel batteries, probably converting over to iron for all the energy storage stuff. So that would become significant if you get to $4 billion per quarter instead of 1, and then you get better margin on that instead of like 4%, get up to like 20%. Then you can get that $1 billion per quarter from energy. And then you just make more Lathrops, more 40 gigawatt hour plants. So then that would become meaningful. Like the miss where they were down $600 million, like that, on net income this last quarter, because of the ramping costs of Berlin and Austin, that would then be offset. Those kind of things be offset by an extra $1 billion of energy revenue in net income.
And building more Lathrops. I mean, how hard can that? I mean, I'm talking Tesla here. Compared to building a car factory, how much easier must it be to build a factory that makes containers and fills them? I mean, it's got to be not hard it could just stamp those babies out. Like, it's not nearly as sexy as cars, but I'm thinking once the street picks up on this, it's got to be almost, you're looking at you add in the what do you call it, the IRA, the
investment,
not
the
investment,
Inflation Reduction Act,
whatever they call it. You add in the $4,500 per kilowatt. I mean, $45 per kilowatt. So you end up maybe doubling the profit that we're now getting out of Tesla in the next 12 months between those two things.
Yeah, making the 4680s. But the Inflation Reduction Act, I'm unclear how much of that translates to stationary energy storage. I think that there's some benefit to that, but I'm unclear as to how that pencils out in terms of like.
Well, it's packaging it, but we'll have to see how they come out on that. But you're looking at 35 at least, and maybe the other 10. So, and then, I mean, it's just, so when the street picks up on the idea that maybe the doubling is going to come from the energy side, that doesn't even count how many cars they're going to make a year, which is a whole nother story. I think nobody has a clue. I think there's going to be a big surprise on the upside on manufactured units and sold units of cars next year.
Yeah, I also think like the whole utility company thing is just very overlooked with the auto beta software and solar panels and all this, because if there's no customer, not right now, they have a huge amount of demand for their big packs. But if it drops down, they can just start and continue making all these packs and just put them down at their supercharger stations and make their own energy. And they don't even have to have cars there to earn money. They could just buy electricity from the grid when the price is low and sell it back when it's high without any cars charging at the place. So I think the whole utility and storage is going to be really huge, and I'm very excited about that for the future as well.
Yeah, and people can get this book. I understand there's a book out, Lars.
Oh, yeah.
And this book, we talk about all this stuff and stuff
Right.
the street doesn't know, and it's stuff that I would say, how much news do you think, Lars, how much news are we breaking in the next week just out of this book?
Well, I think for people that are unfamiliar with the Tesla community or SpaceX or stuff, I think there is a whole book full of news for them, because that's what also got me very excited about writing this book, because that's why I started YouTube, to try to help people understand Tesla as a company, and firstly the cars, and the electric evolution. But it kind of became, trying to understand the company. I really became a fan of Tesla as a company, not just the car, because I think what they did was so mind-boggling. We could see from Sandy Munro when he tear down the car what they did, but how they did it was just like, how can they make 14 design changes to an octo valve in 3 months? It's just nobody does that. And then we have Joe Justice coming, that is also in the book, but he came in and taught us all that it's because of the way they have built the factories. They have reinvented how they produce stuff. And I thought, to me, that was some of the most, if we look backwards, one of the most exciting thing I learned about Tesla is like how they actually manufacture and how different it is from everybody else. And the whole, the agile part of it, where they have tried to get the cost down of making changes to zero, and everything is automated, and it has automated tests and all that stuff, so they can make, like Joe said, 60 changes. There comes 60 different new parts into the factories every single day, like that. How? What?
Yeah. When you have sunk cost, I mean, again, as a manufacturer, we had molds. We were plastics manufacturer. So you go out and you spend $20,000, $25,000, $30,000, even in a small factory, you're spending that much money for a mold. And then maybe you have to have 2 or 3 of those molds. And then all of a sudden you say, oh, here's a good idea for a change. So you go back to the mold maker and you're like, oh, can you modify my mold? Well, if we solder over what we did and then we cut it again, that's going to reduce the lifetime of your mold by this much. Or if we can dig in deeper, that's better, but it's going to take you 6 weeks to get that result. And so you're like, oh, I don't know, should I or shouldn't I? And then Elon turns around and makes those kind of changes to the giga molds, to these giant molds, and he's making changes to those, and I'm going, I don't know how to manufacture.
No. Yeah, and I really think stuff like this, and also like you write about the what did we get to, 25, 24 different moats for Tesla? I can't remember the exact
21 moats.
21 moats. Like, I don't even think people know that Tesla has this many moats.
One of the reasons I wrote the book, see, you guys all came at it slightly differently. You were worried about the misinformation. I was looking at the missing information. Okay. So as a manufacturer and my entire life as a marketer, I was looking at, no, people are completely missing about the manufacturing side and the marketing side. What Elon has created is beyond all the stuff that we think of when we look at a great car and we get into our Model Ys or our Model X's or whatever, and we're like, this car is, I'm so sad for all the other people on the freeway because they don't have this, and that's what the average person out there is going, oh my gosh, it throws me back in my seat. That's what everybody's looking at. As a manufacturer and marketer, I'm going, there's 21 moats. No company. Apple doesn't have 21 moats. Microsoft doesn't have 21 moats. These guys don't have 21. They have 21. And I've already had people writing me and saying, no, here's another moat.
Yeah.
So the
We'd have to have a
21
second
is the
edition
book.
with the other moats.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, actually, didn't we tell you? I think you know this. We're going to have
Yeah.
over-the-air updates.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
The
was
book
making a
is going
joke
to
about
have
that. but yes,
over-the-air
it'll be.
updates.
A
Yeah,
real Elon
Kindle.
Musk book can be over the air updated.
It's an agile book. It's
It's an agile book. Kindle allows
Exactly.
us to actually make major changes in the Kindle version. And so we're going to have over-the-air updates because you have to.
Right.
The new changes
Well,
are
I mean, as of a few minutes ago, Elon Musk is now chief at Twitter. So it's like things are happening.
Yeah.
I actually commented about Walter Isaacson, who is doing the book on Elon, and talking to him. I was like, he's never going to finish this book because he's never going to be able to catch a breath. He's going to be like, Elon, you got to stop for like 1 month so I can complete the book and finish it.
Oh no, this is what I've been going through all last week. You
Right.
guys know I sent you the ending
Yeah.
to review the ending 2 days ago, and the book is out now. That was Wednesday, and the book is on the shelves. It's available to be purchased on Friday. I mean,
Yeah.
no, this is all changing very rapidly. So
polarizing that they people who are super fans or super haters. But I think the book kind of gets to the point that people would unemotionally study the Toyota manufacturing process back for their MBA, and now that the processes and the methods that Elon has have surpassed them, which you can say objectively surpassed them because it Tesla has more margin than Toyota does, and growing an entirely new product line, and I believe may have outsold the Model Y may have outsold the Toyota Corolla last month, definitely this month, because every new car coming out of Texas and Berlin is a Model Y. So if they're talking about getting to 2,000 per week in each of those factories for a month, that would be 24,000 from each of the two new factories. So 40,000 plus 30,000 Model Ys from Fremont in a month, and then or 20,000 in a month, and then 50,000, 60,000 from Shanghai. Then you're over 100,000, which is way more than the Corolla. Corolla's around 80,000 because they dropped down from last year from 1.1. So Toyota's been beaten on the Corolla, the top selling car, and business process wise. So people should look at it in terms of like the section of the book that's talking about here's that business stuff. They can't dismissing it is just insane to not look at that.
Yeah. So if people are interested in learning about the 21 moats, because the moats are what keep the competition at bay. I mean, what are moats for, right? They got the big wide water hazard that you need to get across, and then there's crocodiles and piranha inside. And so this is where Tesla is they're surrounded by water, and they're surrounded by crocodiles and piranhas that are in the water. It's impossible for these other guys to catch. All of us agree we want the other companies to be successful, and they will in their niches, and that'll be great because we need that to get to the 60 million, 70 million of cars by, and the book's got the secret, right? We explain the secret in the book of how we will end the ice age in 2026. By 2027, no more ice cars. Now, there'll be a few, 100,000 or 50,000 here, but not very many. In 2027, nobody believes this, except for, of course, Kathy
Wood.
Kathy Wood believes it'll be 2027, but we show the numbers. We actually, in the book, we talk about here's how it can happen, factory by factory, company by company, how we can actually get it done by the end of 2026. It seems impossible. I was talking to friends at a party last night. They go, Randy, there's no way that all these, I said, read the book. we've got the secret. We're breaking news. Here's how it, Kathy Wood never told us how it gets done. She just says it can get done. Tony Seba never said, how does it get done? Tony Seba says, we will get there by 2027. But we've got the news. The news is, here's how it happens.
Yeah. And on
that's
that
pretty exciting
note-
stuff.
And
Yeah,
on
on
that
that,
note-
that's exciting. That's exciting stuff.
Yeah. And on that note, I think we should cut it here. And please go check out the new book that is on Amazon as you watch this for sure. Yes, it is out right now on Amazon and has already got its first bestseller badge. So that is pretty cool. And the reviews are already coming in and they are looking amazing. Thank you so much for already buying and supporting the book. And I just want to say a big thank you to Randy, Brian, and John for sitting down and doing this interview. But we did actually talk about a lot more, but that is all on Brian's and John's channel. So you want to check out more of all of these great topics, go check out their videos on those channels. But until next time, take care out there and be nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.